And this is going to be my Friday video. I'm only going to do one video going forward. So Thursday and Friday, JSNP4 is in recovery mode with his foot. One video a day. IMF, International Monetary Fund, confirms nightmare scenario for central banks is now in play, according to Silver Doctors. From here, the contagion will spread to the entire world. This ought to be interesting. Now, he says this is actually from Tyler Durden, which again is from the people, that pseudonym or whatever they use at Zero Hedge. The most important piece of news announced today was also, as usually happens, the most underreported. It had nothing to do with U.S. jobs, with the Fed's hiking intentions with China, or even the ongoing 1998-style carnage in emerging markets. Instead, it was the admission by ECB Governing Council member Ewald Nowotny, that what he said about the ECB hitting a supply brick wall was right. Specifically, earlier today, Bloomberg quoted the Austrian central banker that the ECB asset-backed securities purchasing program, quote, hasn't been as successful as we hoped, end quote. Why? It's simply because they are running out. There are simply too few of these structured products out there. So 6 months later, the ECB begrudgingly admitted what we said in March of 2015 in a complete preview of QE and why it will fail was correct, and namely this. The ECB is monetizing over half of gross issuance and more than twice net issuance, and a cool 12% of Eurozone GDP. The latter figure there could easily rise if GDP contracts and QE is expanded, a scenario which should certainly not be rolled out given Europe's fragile economic situation and expectations for the ECB to remain accommodative for the foreseeable future. In fact, the market is already talking about the likelihood that the program will be expanded or extended. While we hate to beat a dead horse, the sheer lunacy of a bond buying program that is only constrained by the fact that there simply aren't enough bonds to buy cannot possibly be overstated. Among the program's many inherent absurdities are the glaring disparity between the size of the program and the amount of net euro fixed income issuance, and the more nuanced fact that the effects of previous ECB easing, again quantitative easing, efforts virtually ensure that QE cannot succeed. And he says, actually, we said all of the above first all the way back in 2012, but that's irrelevant. So aside from the ECB officially admitting that it has become supply constrained, even with security prices at near all-time highs, why is this so critical? Readers will recall that just the other day, or yesterday, we explained why suddenly the Bank of Japan has an unexpected problem on its hands, in which we quoted Bank of America rates strategist who said that now that GPIF's selling has finished, the focus will be on who else is going to sell. Unless Japan Post-Bank sells JGBs, the Bank of Japan won't be able to continue its monetary stimulus operations. And we also said this. In 6 to 9 months following the next major market swoon, when everyone is demanding more action from the Bank of Japan, suddenly pundits will have discovered the biggest glitch in the ongoing quantitative easing monetization regime, namely that the Bank of Japan simply cannot continue its current QE program, let alone boost QE, as many are increasingly demanding, unless it finds willing sellers. And having already bought everything the single biggest holder of JBs, the GPIF, had to sell, the Bank of Japan will next shake down the Post Bank, whose sales of Japan 45, which those bonds, whatever, trillion are critical to keep Japan's QE going. The sale of that amount, however, by the second largest holder of JGBs, will only last the Bank of Japan for the next 3 months. And then what next? Which other pension fund will have the massive holdings required to keep the Bank of Japan going, not only in 2016 but also 2017 and onward? The answer is simply less and less. Once again, to be accurate, the first time we warned about the biggest nightmare on deck for the Bank of Japan and ECB and the Fed, and every other monetizing central bank for that matter, was back in 2014, when we cautioned that the biggest risk was a lack of monetizable supply. We cited Takuji Okubo, say that fast 3 times, chief economist at Japan Macro Advisors in Tokyo, who said that at the scale of its current debt monetization, the Bank of Japan would end up owning half of the JGB market by as early as 2017. He added that the Bank of Japan is basically declaring that Japan will need to fix its long-term problems by 2018 or risk becoming a failed nation. Now, I find that amazing that that damn date, 2018, just punched us in the mouth. Where else did we hear that date, that year? Ooh, The Economist magazine from 1988. Remember that? And you know who owns that magazine? The Rothschild family. The big, giant gold coin around a, let's say a falcon or whatever the heck is coming up from the ashes of the burning dollars, right? And some of them are American dollars, some are other countries, but they're burning these dollars. And it says, get ready for a new world currency in the year 2018. So, let me read that last sentence for you. But it's a phoenix rising, not a, what the hell I said. The Bank of Japan is basically declaring that Japan will need to fix its long-term problems by 2018 or risk becoming a failed nation. The Bank of Japan will not boost QE, and if anything will have no choice but to start tapering it down, just like the Fed did when its interventions created the current illiquidity in the U.S. government market, especially since liquidity in the Japanese government market is now non-existent and getting worse by the day. All that would take for a massive VAR shock scenario to play out in Japan is one exogenous JGB event for the market to realize just how little actual natural buyers and sellers exist. That said, our conclusion was not to expect the media to grasp the profound implications of this analysis, not only for the Bank of Japan, but for all central banks. We expect this to be summer of 2016's business may have been a tad premature. So, this, you know, as I read this is like, I think of the Webbot report. Failing economies, failing countries, failing dollars in the U.S. dollar system, the Federal Reserve System, the central bank system. This is essentially what I'm getting out of this. Whether it's, I don't think it's going to punch us in the face this year, but again, Japan has, there's a ticking time clock there. By 2018, they've got to do something, and then there's something that they can do, they can't do. So, essentially, Japan's going to be a failed state. So if they time this right, the club, Japan problems, Greece already has problems, all these other countries, South American countries, they scoop the whole world up, let us fix the problems of everybody, one world currency, and all the pain and suffering will stop. Anybody in any of these countries would say to their government, you not can you do this, you better do this because we're suffering. And the club will say, see, you need to listen to your citizens. So the question remains, how are they going to do us in America? Because they have to do the same thing here somewhat. We have the same problems. We had quantitative easing. We had this massive balance sheet in the Federal Reserve that has not gone down. What are we going to do about it? We have an $8 trillion debt that turned to $9 trillion quickly, that turned to 12, 14, 16, 18, now $19 trillion in 8 freaking years? Doubled? How are we just going to flick a wand? Or are we going to do what Puerto Rico said the other day? We didn't have the authority to borrow that, so everybody we owe, it's null and void. Or is that what we're going to do? Nah. ain't gonna go down like that, because what Puerto Rico, difference between Puerto Rico and us, even though they're kind of a U.S. state in a sense, one of our territories, but in their constitution, they cannot borrow money to finance, I think, future budget deficits or whatever it was. And in ours, we just say, well, we can't really do it either, so we just raise the debt ceiling. Raise the debt ceiling. That's how 8 turned to 9 trillion, turned to 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 19 trillion in 8 years. 9 turned to 19 in 8 years. Raise the debt ceiling. Oh, we can't borrow, it's against the Constitution? Oh, raise the debt ceiling. Okay, now we can. But again, as that's raised, and we're paying interest on that debt, there's a point of no return that is reached ultimately when you cannot fix it. And by God, all countries on the face of the earth are actually at that point of no return, including us, even though it may not look like it. So, there's a little bit more to this article, but I mean, my point's made. The point is made. They're going to have to take down all these countries, the whole economy, the whole world economy. They have to take it down. That's the only way, honestly, that this debt can be dealt with. Because if you write it all off, well, the people who bought those bonds and are wanting to collect that interest on those bonds, and then at the end of that period get their money back in full, they get nothing. Well, then they're in trouble. They go bankrupt, right? So then you have, again, there's no easy way out of this. It's like a four-sided box, and you think to yourself, well, we've got 4 different solutions. Not only that, we've got a 5th one, because we've got 4 sides, and we've got a top. Can't go to the bottom because it's on the floor, but we can go to the top. So there's even more. There's 5. And each time you go out one of these corners, sides, and the top, ultimately the result is the same. Economic collapse. So you've got 5 choices, kind of like our presidents. You got 2 choices. You got a Democrat and a Republican. You do have a choice. Pick one. You have 5 choices. Pick one. Okay, economic collapse, economic collapse, economic collapse, economic collapse, and economic collapse. Because the underlying fundamentals, the reasons are there, and they've been there and have always been there. And that's part of the problem. The fractional reserve lending system creates this type of ending ultimately, where it goes down in flames. And on top of it, we decided to not back our money by gold anymore in 1971. So now we have a complete pure fiat currency. It's backed by nothing on top of fractional reserve banking combined. This ends pretty badly. Take care.